the adrenaline rush. And I guess you're saying that I guess the unicorn horn will concentrate this will.
And another example of sheer adrenaline rush, this is fairly recent. An Australian diver had his torso and up in a mouth of a great white shark. He pulled out a diving knife and proceeded to cut the shark's head off while it tried to kill him and swim out the hole. There is no way you should consciously be able to do that. It's just sheer force of will to say, I am not going to die today.
Exactly. See, Twilight Spark will do that. All right, you in the back with the hat on, beanie on.
Oh, all right. Which one?
Oh,
we both have hats.
Okay, we'll get to both of you then.
King horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
You go first.
Okay. Camelot Castle. How does it not just falling off the side of that hill? And
engineering! Marvels of engineering. Oh, I'm trying to think of a close equivalent.
Okay. So some close equivalents would be, example, modern marvel of engineering, a glass walkway across canyons in Tibet. Because logically, from every point of view, that glass walkway should in no way, shape, or form support a human being.
Patora Palace, actually, I was just thinking the palace of the Dalai Lama back when Tibet was still an independent kingdom was famously built on a mountainside, very, very similar to that. And I think Canterlot might have got references from the Tibetan palace of the Dalai Lama just for that. But there is interesting cases. Like, we don't even know how a lot of things were made. If we look like at the ancient Egyptians or Machu Picchu or Pumapunka, how do humans make stuff like this? It's crazy. It's not alien snow.
Another really good engineering example here, a suspension bridge. If under any circumstance, the suspension bridge should not stand up. Every single one of those wires holding that bridge up, none of them are capable of supporting the entire bridge. But their interlocking support transfers the weight back and forth as cars and people walk across it, resulting in the bridge not only standing up, but staying nearly absolutely stationary. So if Canterlot Castle is built on a series of very long extensions that go out into the mountain, so long as the extension goes further into the mountain than it comes out, by an engineering standpoint, you interlock those, and now the mountain itself is holding it up, in addition to the interlocking mechanisms such as I-beams and H-beams and even some suspension technology to make sure that the weight is equally transferred to all sections of the mountain. You're not exceeding the hardness or structural stress that the actual mountainside can absorb.
And basically what she's saying is the extension cables move the center of mass from when you think of Canterlot Castle on a mountain, you'll think the center of mass would be there. The center of gravity and center of mass, because of the extension cables, will be moved to inside the mountain. In that case, is safe from collapsing under its own weight. All right, the other hat person is the hat people person.
An extension of like the use of will in cases of extreme strength and dire situations. There's always a cost with that in those situations of an adrenaline rush. People lifting up a car, they almost always break nearly every bone in the body. It always leaves permanent damage.
There are a couple martial arts techniques in which you do a lot of meditation. Part of that meditation is to develop your body in such a way that when you activate your adrenaline glands, you are in that mode continuously, thereby making sure that you're always at the absolute limit of your strength until you're about to break your own bones.
Yep. Actually, you can look up some Stanford papers on it, because I remember my dad actually was helping Stanford with some of these experiments. But there's the famous, not the anime One Punch Man, but there are famous martial arts experts who could poke through like metal with one finger, and you could see they have years and years of built up calluses, and their knuckles have reformed over the lifetime to be able to puncture metal. But yeah, again, they trained and practiced. They started with things like melons before moving on to like concrete, before moving on to metal. It's just years of vigorous training, concentration, and willpower that focused it to the point. But the body had to adjust to it, which is probably why unicorn horns, I think in the show, some are shorter, some are longer.
And also this is why unicorns spend years practicing and developing, is because they're training it much like a muscle or like another bone of the body. If you keep training something, it will develop and do what you want it to. Example, a bodybuilder can train their muscles to lift 500 pounds. They don't start with 500 pounds, they start with like 100 and then work their way to it. A unicorn in this case is simply starting with a muscle that we don't have. Oh my.
All right.
Oh my.
Can Pegasi own a horn?
I think it has a little horn. I guess it'll be an alicorn now.
Have an alicorn.
And I would say yes, because we've seen it in the show. Baby, who are not princesses. We've seen alicorns who are not princesses in the show. And yes, and that would probably go with the... I would say, from the genetic standpoint, it's a recessive trait in that case.
I would have to agree it's an extremely recessive trait.
All right. You and the beanie in the back that we missed the first time. Yes?
Yeah, we're trying to work our way around in the order we see the hands.
I'm not sure if this is really counter-scientific, but why would the crystal ponies build their kingdom in what is essentially the North Pole if they apparently need to live in average temperatures like Ponyville?
I don't have the reason why they would do that. That's more of a history question that we don't have.
Yep.
However, I want to point out that the Crystal Heart effectively terraforms a small area with a form of terraforming that we clearly don't have any idea how to do.
Yeah.
But
And apparently no one else in the Equestria knows how to do either.
yes, they clearly have some form of what we consider magic, which I look at the Crystal Heart and go, technology! Because it breaks.
You know, I just realized, if you notice almost every single superhero movie, the big bad guy has to terraform Earth with his space bugs, and the terraforming device is always a giant blue beam.
Yes,
Like-
Skybeam.
Like Suicide Squad, Justice League, Avengers,
The Crystal
Spider-Man.
Empire's giant blue terraforming
Yeah.
beam of Goodbye Sombra.
Yeah, with accurately enough space bugs. This is where Red Letter Media is from, so they talk about space bugs. All right, let's see. I guess, okay, well, everyone who has their hands up will kind of...
How about we do
work
this?
their
How about we do
hand.
this? Is this microphone on?
Nope.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll just have people
How about we
line
just
up.
form a line?
Form a line, we'll answer as much as we can.
I don't mean to make you guys get up, but
Yeah.
there's a lot
Yeah,
up here.
I don't think we need mic. I think we can hear them well enough.
Sorry, man.
You can hear.
So, up first here, Mr. Chrysalis.
Alright, bear with me for a minute. Dealing with a cold, so maybe a bit slow. Discombobulated. Changelings. Unicorn body structure, but from what we can tell, insect skin, endoskeleton, and exoskeleton. That's a question of itself. Predatory features like fangs, forked tongues, slitted eyes, and parasitic feeding habits. How do all of those come together?
I'd say the shape of the unicorn is just convergent evolution. I wouldn't say they were related, but they have two different convergent evolutions. So if you look at an armadillo or a what's that
Possum.
Asian? Yep, possum or let's survey.
They want you.
So, I would say that if their natural feeding habit is on a pony, and their natural way of acquiring that food is through camouflage, then the best evolution of camouflage results in the survivors continuing to breed and the ones who don't have the best camouflage being discovered and removed over and over and over again for thousands of years. So that means that it is in their best interest to use this magic thing that they have, which is an extension of their force of their will, to control their own evolution, to keep themselves as close to their prey as possible, while still being able to tell the difference between themselves and their prey, so that they can attack their prey when they have no defenses against them. Because you notice, as soon as they're found out, it's over. Like, as soon as they're found out and raw firepower can be brought to bear, it's done. Changelings are no good in a fight. They have to creep up on you, they have to ambush you, and they have to have you at a disadvantage.
A good example is there is a fly that looks almost like a bee. It's the exact same markings, the exact same stripes as a bumblebee, as a honeybee, and it actually does sometimes go to the hives and eat some of the honey. So it has to disguise itself to look like the bee. But it also is a great deterrent because predators will think of it as a bee, even though it has no stingers or any defenses. These creatures survive because they need to look like bees to sneak into the hives and steal the honey, yet at the same time, looking like a bee also helps protect them against predators when they have no defenses. So I guess we could see the changelings as very, very similar in that case.
Also, honestly, bugs have the most dynamic evolution cycle ever and have the quickest evolution cycle compared to any animal in the world. So any arthropod, any insectopod has literally a faster evolution cycle because their lifespans are much, much shorter.
All right, thank you.
I'd like that.
Hi. All right, on her Ann's question about the Pegasus having a horn. You can be a Pegasus and have a horn and not be an alicorn. If you remember, they have the power of all three races. So let's say that your parents are a unicorn and a Pegasus. You have both, but do not have Earth Pony magic. So you would be both, but not as powerful as, let's say, a unicorn.
I have to disagree on the grounds that when Flurry Heart, which I won't use my nickname for that, was born, is clearly like an event that has never happened before. There's a lot of debate in like why is this a thing. In addition to this, I would also cite the recessive genes that come to fruition from the Cakes children, with the same color palette as the Cakes, but by God, unicorn and Pegasus, meaning that the traits are recessive dominant to each other, and you could not necessarily have a Pegasus unicorn simply because one would beat the other. My guess would be the Pegasus would beat the other because Pegasus are more common than unicorns. When I statistically sit down and analyze the entire population of every single episode, literally it's Earth Pony, Pegasus, unicorn is the order of greatest population to least.
But
and
it's not one's born without Earth Pony magic, but with a horn.
Then the gene would be, it would not have the wings.
Yeah.
One gene, when you draw a Punnett square and you analyze recessive and dominant traits, if two come together where you have Pegasus unicorn, the Pegasus is going to be the dominant over the unicorn. The horn is not going to form.
Yeah.
If it does form, my imagination would say that because of how dense and hard we've seen the unicorns be, the unicorn horns be versus the Pegasi snap a wing every flipping day, the Pegasi body wouldn't be able to support it. It would, the mutation would not be sustained, and the child would probably die.
Thank you. John Curtin from Australia. Again, he looks like the Australian leader for CIS6. I know he's pretty. What's your question?
Going off of the changeling thing, more recently with mostly Pharynx transforming the things that are bigger than his original form and having comparable strength.
Have you read Animorphs?
Yes!
In Animorphs, A.K. Applegate actually comes up with the theory of Z-space, which actually has been taken up in prominence in some more fringe fields of astrobiology and quantum mechanics. But her idea is how, so for example, in the Animorphs world, how could you change your mass from a human body to something as small as a fly or something as big as an elephant? So she has an idea that when the Animorphs do this, when they turn to something small, that mass is going somewhere. That mass is going to another dimension called Z-space, which is where light speed travel happens. And when you need to add mass to your body, like Rachel turns into an elephant, you need to draw from that Z-space. I guess, and the problem with that case is because that's where all the light speed travelings happen, there is a very, very small % chance that your mass could be hit and you're stuck in that floor. But that is an idea that does come up because, so law of thermodynamics and energy and matter can neither be created or destroyed. So there has to be a consistent amount of energy or matter from the universe. So if they turn to something bigger and stronger, he would have to be borrowing that from somewhere else in the universe, and something else will have to be taken away from it. So since magic seems to be the norm of this world, some type of magical force will drain energy from. It doesn't even have to be a life form. It could be maybe a whale or a geyser that has some type of form, and give it to these changelings.
I mean, I'm willing to buy that. I don't know. They can do this now as opposed to before because not kept on the brink of starvation. But
my theory was, I thought my theory was a little fringe, but I'm going to go out on my limb now. It's very simple for me to say that, to me, it seems like they're transposing. That is to say, you've held space and you had the ability to trade your mind with something else.